that I need to share this truth with? That's always a question I have to ask myself in those moments. And also, all while realizing that every decision carries impact. I've had days where I left work just mentally exhausted. Days like I described to you moments ago. And not because of what I did, but because of how much I had to consider, whether that week or that day, that month, whatever it was. Now, this decision fatigue, it really happens because you care deeply. You're thoughtful and always weighing impacts, not just the outcomes of all the situations. So what I would say to you, and what I learned, is not to let anyone convince you that this fatigue actually happens because you are weak. By no means. These activities, they happen, and the fatigue happen because it's unchecked. And ultimately, it just drains you. I would say one of the hardest parts of leadership that I can share is that you don't always get to have an off day. A lot of us know that. There are no off days. Even when you're tired, even when you feel like life just gets a bit too much, or when you're navigating those uncertainties, you as a leader, you're still expected to just be steady. You have to also regulate your emotions so that others feel safe in your presence. That really takes a lot of work. Because unfortunately, you don't get any applauses. You don't get any applause for the reaction that you didn't have. You don't get any recognition for the tension that you had to absorb. You just ultimately, you just carry it. I've had to smile through meetings on days when my heart felt really, really, really heavy. I've actually coached others through moments that I was still even processing myself, because whatever was happening to them was also happening to me. And that doesn't make leaders inauthentic if you have to do that, by no means, even though some may think so. I've heard people say that. I think it just makes them a little bit more disciplined. I mean, the fact is, if you don't process what you carry, eventually it carries you. Let me repeat that. If you don't process what you carry, it eventually carries you. And believe it or not, that's where you actually begin to see burnout. Emotional intelligence, or EI, it's not soft. It's actually strategically knowing when to push and maybe even when to pause. It's about knowing when to challenge and when to listen, even when knowing when silence says more than the words actually would. I know this is hard for some of us because we just have the need to say things. But sometimes silence is better. Leadership is also about influence and protecting the environment while still moving it forward. Those leaders that I've experienced with high emotional intelligence, they typically don't avoid hard conversations. They know and are skilled at navigating them with both care and clarity. And the truth is, your ability as a leader to read the room, knowing how to manage your responses, all while building trust in the process, it often matters more than the technical expertise that you may have. Now, let's be clear. Self-care isn't a threat for surviving leadership. It's actually part of the job. Yes, it is. Because unfortunately, you can't hold space if you're depleted and not regulate others if you're dysregulated. You have to be regulated so that you can regulate others. What I like to say all the time when discussing this particular topic is you can't pour from an empty cup. I'm sure we've heard that at least once before. You yourself need to ensure that you are refilling your cup before pouring into someone else's. So, self-care for high performers and leaders, it doesn't always look like resting, though some may think so. Sometimes it's really about ensuring that we create boundaries, that we're delegating to others who are capable, and also saying no. N-O. No. No is one word. It's also just a sentence. Even in those moments when you could say yes. And please know that caring for yourself isn't selfish. So as I close this episode, I would like for you to remember that emotional labor by no means is considered weakness. And it's also not being too sensitive. It's actually skilled emotional management so that we can serve our stability in whatever we're navigating. But please know that when it is constantly unacknowledged, it becomes very draining. It can also be isolating and even expected by others who obviously don't know better. Ultimately, though, leadership is about emotional presence and not just about vision and execution and things of that sort. It's about the unseen labor of holding, of deciding, of regulating, and caring without the acknowledgement that all of this typically deserves. If you're experiencing this and you feel tired from all of this emotional labor that you're going through, it doesn't mean that you're failing at what you're doing or what you're responsible for. It might mean that you're carrying leadership as best as you can, and you're doing it well. But carrying it well doesn't mean that you have to carry it alone. As we continue this season of Restless Excellence, please remember that your emotional labor counts and your capacity also matters. And caring for yourself, it's not a luxury, it's a leadership responsibility. So, you should lead with clarity and compassion and also with care. Not just care for others, but also care for yourself. That's important. Here's the question I'll leave you to reflect on until next episode. What would change if you honored your emotional labor as real work and protected yourself accordingly? This is Restless Excellence.